Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Thank you, Jason, for engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. We broadcast 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. That's when we're live. And we're picked up and rebroadcast by other outfits, including Republic Broadcasting Network, tape delayed one day, and others as well, and on the Ron Gibson channel on YouTube. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. We're going to be talking about vaccines for hour number 1, and we'll be talking about my unpublished book and tips that I have for you, hour number 2. I'd like to introduce to you someone I know personally and have known for years, Nurse Tracy. She's been in the medical profession since 1994. She has 25 years experience as a nurse, and her husband has 45 years as a DO. So both are involved in medicine, and we're going to be talking about vaccines, and I think you're going to learn some things that you probably don't want to know, but are going to be useful. It's going to be disturbing, but necessary. Welcome, Tracy.
Hey, Vinny. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Well, vaccines. I know so many people are sick. They have all kinds of diseases, asthma and cancer and autoimmune diseases, and it's getting tougher, arthritis and meningitis. It's getting worse out there, and I hardly know anyone who says, oh, I'm fit as a fiddle. Everybody's got problems of some sort. Can we trace these maladies, these illnesses, these diseases back to vaccines? Because, frankly, when I was young, back in the 1950s, I learned that in my grandmother's area on the East Coast, there was someone who had cancer, and it was like very quiet. You really don't want to talk about it because they've got someone over there in that house that has cancer. Now, don't go over there because you might get it. And it was that rare. It was that rare that hardly anybody had it. But now every family has it. What have you found out?
Right. Well, I spend a enormous amount of my time doing research because I love to seek truth. So I started to put 2 and 2 together, which is really kind of common sense. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out. All you have to do is really go literally to the government sites themselves, and you will find numerous articles at the National Institutes of Health talking about different side effects and possible causes and effects of people receiving diseases. So, I came along a little bit later than you did. So in the 1970s and 80s, I graduated high school in 1990. So at that time, it was very, very rare also to hear of a cancer case or someone that had MS, or even diabetes was relatively rare at that time. But you can see a direct correlation between the increase in vaccinations of people and the increase in these disease processes. And also, there's a mystery disease, quote-unquote mystery disease, but a lot of people have what's called and termed fibromyalgia. Now, doctors, they've determine certain symptoms to qualify people into fibromyalgia, but they don't know what's causing it, and they really don't know what to treat it with, okay? So what they do is treat symptoms. They can't get to the causation of the issue. Well, if you go back and look at and do a little bit of research on what types of treatments have you had, and go look at the side effects for these different treatments. Now, I'm talking about the flu vaccine, but I'm also talking about the pharmacomafia tablets that everyone gets to treat the symptoms of the disease, not the disease itself. And, I've in the past been a little bit frustrated with people's lack of motivation to research some stuff for themselves. Okay, because we have the information highway. You can look up all kinds of facts, figures, statistics. And then I'm also concerned about that we just blanket trust government entities. Now, having said that, I would like to also say that the CDC is a private corporation. They are not government-owned. They are government-funded through grants, that type of stuff, but they're a private corporation. The same with the FDA. It's like Federal Express. They're not federal, but they use the name federal. It's the same thing with the FDA, Federal, Drug Administration. The CDC has many, many patents on vaccinations. And what the vaccinations I want to start talking about a little bit today, and you can throw in what, maybe questions you have. And if I don't know something, there's two things about me that you need to know. Number one, I love people. I really, really love people. That's why I went to nursing school to start with. And number two, if I'm wrong, I'm going to tell you I'm wrong. If I don't know, I'm going to say I don't know. I'll say I haven't researched that yet, but I keep a notebook by my chair and write down names. I write down where these different vaccinations, quote-unquote, studies, where they went, which college they went through, who was the professor, who was the scientist. And anyone that knows anything about science knows that science evolves. It's not a set in stone. This is the fact, period. It never changes, okay? The next thing that people need to know is that there have never been any double-blind placebo studies on any of the vaccinations that are out there, period. They have not been done. So there is no science. Basically what happens is it goes to a college or university, and the pharmacomafia will tell them, this is what we need you to say, and they create a great big, humongous fear in people, and they run and get whatever they tell them to do. And what's going on in the medical profession is that, I went to nursing school, and here's what I learned about vaccines. We learned what the schedule was, and we learned what diseases these vaccines are supposed to prevent. The same with medical school when Doc went to medical school. That's what you learn. So to any healthcare professionals out there that would be listening right now, I'm only asking you to broaden your horizons and research for yourself without blindly following the herd. Okay, so what I want to talk about, I printed up some stuff, and most of this information is from the CDC itself, actually. The number one infant mortality rate in the industrialized world is the United States of America. I'm going to repeat that. The number one infant mortality rate in the industrialized world is the United States of America. Now, the number one state in the United States for the highest mortality rate is Mississippi. Vinny, would you like to guess which state has the most people vaccinated and children vaccinated and infants vaccinated?
Well, I would have to say Mississippi.
That's right. Now, the very first vaccine babies get in the hospital right as soon as they're born is vitamin K. vitamin K, this is what they say, okay, there's a lot of things that go into this also, but when someone says you're going to be getting a vitamin, your baby's going to get a vitamin, you're like, well, heck yeah, we want our babies to have vitamins. If they need vitamins, this is good, right? Well, what most people don't know is that vitamin K has a black label on it. Now, black label means in the medical profession that used with caution can cause very serious, severe side effects, okay? So here's the package insert on the vitamin K injection. The black box warning says that the risks include death, anaphylaxis, shock, and cardiac arrest. Now, I went a little bit further into looking up some vitamin K issues. So here's another adverse reaction for it. It's an 18-letter word, okay? So let's just say the average person that's not medically trained sees this word and they go, hyperbilirubinemia. And they go, oh, okay, what's that? Because unless you write it down or you research what it is, the common word for it is jaundice, okay? Which is a common side effect of the vitamin K shot that is given literally within minutes of the baby being born. So you've probably heard of several babies having jaundice. You understand what I'm saying? And there's other things that can cause jaundice also, but I find it quite odd that the vitamin K shot lists hyperbilirubinemia as a side effect for this vaccine. That's black labeled. So, you know, you were talking about the 1950s, and I was talking about 70s, 80s, when I grew up and graduated nursing school in 94. Well, think back to, like, let's say the 17 and 1800s, right? Do you think that babies that were born in the 17, 1800s had the vitamin K shot because, oh my gosh, they might bleed to death? I mean, our population wouldn't have increased. You see what I'm saying? If these were facts, it's just common sense, deductive reasoning to come to these conclusions. You do not have to be enormously intelligent. So, the next shot that they give babies is the hepatitis B vaccine. Now, unless the mother has hepatitis B, then there's some certain indications, you know, and things that you need to watch out for. But you get hepatitis B from two things: sex industry and drug needles. Okay. Now, I'm not sure about you, but my thought process is I'm pretty sure that my baby that was just born isn't going to be around any needles, drug needles, right? And I'm pretty sure they're not going to be partaking in the sex industry. So, what sense does this make? And I don't know if we're going to commercial break or not, but...
Yeah, we're going into a break right now. We've got a couple seconds. And Nurse Tracy is talking about vaccines, and this is an eye-opener class. Please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Nurse Tracy's with us, and she's been talking about hyperbilirubinemia, and she's talking about the sex trade and drug needles being a root cause for hepatitis B in babies. And if you think about it, hardly any babies are exposed to either one of those. So please continue, Tracy.
Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the listed side effects. This is the CDC, okay, of the hepatitis B. Fever, fatigue, loss of appetite, nausea, and or vomiting, jaundice. So now we have 2 injections at birth of children, of the babies, infants are receiving that cause jaundice, hyperbilirubinemia, okay? Now, if they don't get the hepatitis B vaccine and are exposed to the virus, it causes liver damage, liver cancer, and death. Now, the question I have to ask is this. Is there a possibility that the vaccine itself causes these diseases also? By the way, every vaccine available to be injected, all of them list death as a possible side effect. So keep this in mind. Because we're going to talk about VAERS, the vaccine reporting agency through the Department of HHS, okay? I want to talk about that today, too. Vaccine Injury Reporting Agency. So it just makes common sense to me that we're damaging our children from the get-go, okay? Now, also, another side effect that most vaccines have is diarrhea, okay? So now we have a rotavirus vaccine for diarrhea. One of the side effects for the rotavirus vaccine is, you guessed it, here it says, give me 1 second because I want to read this to you very exactly, that it could cause slight cases of diarrhea, small cases of diarrhea. So you get the vaccine because your baby's had diarrhea. That can cause some instances of diarrhea. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, please continue.
So, I recently came across an article, and it was written by a caretaker in a funeral home, undertaker. And he reported, along with a lot of his colleagues, that when they have an infant that's died of SIDS, okay, the doctors can't explain it. Now, there have been several families that have either had the means or they've done a fundraiser for themselves that their infants have died with the official cause as SIDS on their death certificate. Now, these families have hired an independent lab and taken tissues, they've received from their baby and their blood samples received from their babies, and have proven that they have a huge amount of metal toxicities in their blood and in their tissues. Now, most vaccines also have a chemical called polysorbate 80. Polysorbate 80 helps any heavy metals transfer through the blood-brain barrier easier, okay? Now, what happens when it goes through the blood-brain barrier is that the first organ, which is it's a little itty-bitty tiny organ in your brain called the pineal gland. That's where it directly goes to very, very first. And it calcifies the pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland, and I want people to write this stuff down, look it up for themselves. I do not want them to listen to Tracy. Tracy does not listen to other people. I take notes. I research constantly, okay? I do not say, oh, Vinny said. I do not want them to listen to Tracy said. I want them to do their own homework. So these tests have come back on these infants that have been SIDS. They stopped breathing, which, by the way, I just read you side effects that indicate that those are things that happen from these vaccinations.
We're going into a break, Tracy. Let's continue this when we come back. Nurse Tracy's with us. Class, I know Tracy. She's been to our events. She has been to our Get Prepared Expos. And she's been on the air with us before. And for those of you who are interested, she'll be with us next Friday at the same time. So if you want to hear more of Nurse Tracy, next Friday as well. Tracy, you were talking about polysorbate 80, a component of vaccines, and how it calcifies the pineal gland. Please continue.
Well, the polysorbate 80 is a chemical that allows the toxins that are in vaccines, so mercury and aluminum, thimerosal is the name they use to hide it, to easily cross the blood-brain barrier. So it calcifies the pineal gland, which the pineal gland is known to give us our advanced intuition, our spirituality, our connection with Source, God, okay? And they want that blocked only because it's less information people are able to absorb in order to be enlightened, if you will, or spiritual, okay, to the levels that we were created to be. Now, I want to go back to the caretaker for the funeral home. So he had an increase in not only Sid's death, but death of elderly people in direct correlation to the increased schedule of vaccinations in infants and flu and pneumonia vaccines in the elderly. So, of course, when these families come in with their deceased infants, it's absolutely horrific and tragic. They're devastated. So, at some point with the conversations of these young parents, he says, asks them gently, is there any chance recently that your child's had vaccinations? Now, he said every single time, and I mean every single time, that, yes, they've recently had a vaccination, okay? It doesn't take rocket science to figure out what's happening, because every vaccine lists death as a possible side effect, okay? That's pushed off as sudden infant death syndrome. Now, in the elderly, as soon as the flu shot vaccine, or, time comes around where everybody's getting their flu vaccines, he's also had an increase in, say, compared to the summer months, right, where there's not the flu vaccine, and then the flu vaccine starts early fall, an increase in mortality rates for the elderly. So here's what they've just recently come out with for the flu vaccine. Now tell me if this makes any sense. And I hope your listeners, Benny, the people that are listening to us, can pick up on what I'm about to say. So please listen very, very carefully to me. Up until the age of 65, you are to get the 1-dose flu vaccine, okay? Magically, you turn 66 the following year, and now all of a sudden, you're going to need the 4 times dose flu vaccine. Does that make any sense to anyone?
I know a guy who was a friend of mine, lived down the road. He was in his 80s. He had just gotten cancer, and he was doing fine. He was being treated for cancer in a hospital in Springfield, and he would go for checkups. And one day he said he was going for a checkup. The next day, and I said, Paul, whatever you do, they're going to want you to get a flu vaccine. Don't get it, don't get it, don't get it. Promise me. Promise me you won't get it. He said, okay, I promise. He went to his doctor's appointment. I called him up, and I said, how'd it go? He said, okay, it went great. He said, but I want to tell you that the doctor said I needed the flu vaccine, so I took it. He was dead in 30 days.
Right. And also, if you dig in the information on the CDC information, or go to the National Institutes of Health, either one, you're going to find in there, if you dig deep enough and hard enough, but they're taking some information out because the public is becoming increasingly aware of things are not adding up. Okay, thank God. But in their paperwork, you can find that the side effects for these vaccines can appear anywhere between 1 week after the vaccine up to 5 months after the vaccine. Now, I would argue that given the increase in autoimmune diseases, and this would be anyone that was born, prior to, I'm going to say 1985. And that's probably pushing it out quite a few years. But if you pay attention to, certainly the baby boomer generation, largest generation, that we have, certainly they're aware of the uptick in people being diagnosed with cancer, different kinds of autoimmune diseases. Even the teachers are noticing the increase in the autism rates, the ADHD, the oppositional defiant disorders, the suicidal tendencies of people. Well, of course they are. Okay, you're putting toxic chemicals in your bloodstream that's going to your brain, which makes it not function correctly. Now, it's not just vaccinations. It's also fluoride in our water, and it's also poisons in our food, which is for a different day, different conversations. Dr. Shealy talks about fluoride incessantly, which he should, because it is a neurotoxin that is in most cities' drinking water. They shower in it, they drink it. I'm on a well, thank God. I also filter my water. But you put all of these factors together, these people aren't just making this stuff up. Every single day on my Facebook page, there's a new mother on there that had to find out the hard way because her baby's not here anymore, okay? Why do we want to get to that point? Now, this is going to be out there for a lot of people, but I researched soft kill warfare, okay? And are you familiar with the syphilis, that they gave, that our government tested on, on the
Tuskegee,
black soldiers, okay?
Tuskegee Airmen, yes.
Right. Now, if you talk to anyone that's recently been in the military, they're continuing to be guinea pigs or lab rats for the government. They're coming back out of these wars, and back here we have several patients that have multiple diseases, okay? Young people. I mean, young people are getting dementia by the time they're 40 years old. And I'm just begging people to please do some research. I'm begging medical professionals. It's becoming increasingly more aware. Just recently, a doctor that's actually a pediatrician, it finally clicked to him what was happening, and he's grieving. Because the first thing we do is no harm. First, do no harm. So we believe that by giving them these things that we're helping them. We're believing what the pharmacomafia sent in to teach us in the office with the click-clackers, that's what I call them, click-clackers, that are trained to memorize this information, and this is what you go talk to the doctor about in 5 minutes, right? Because they don't have time. They don't have to take very much time to find out some facts. And they're increasingly, thank goodness, they're increasingly becoming more and more aware of this is damaging the children that I love and that I take care of. And they're now grieving and apologizing because they did not know. They did not know. So for me, when I say I do not know something, the battle is over because I'm going to learn it. So I'm either going to figure it out on myself or I'm going to find out where I can get the information, any number of doctor friends that I have that I can ask about any number of diseases, okay? Or, Vinny, do you know about this? Because I don't know a lot about this, so could you help me out and tell me what you know or give me some resources or books that I could read? And I'm going to be on it because it's something that I love to do, but I want to know what the truth is. I don't want to harm people. Our society as a whole has become so busy that they don't take the time to gather their own information. Either they listen to the television, which has lie in it, lie vision, right? Or programming. It's named that for a reason. We're given our own brains to do our own research. And so another thing that's happening is that if anyone out there that's had vaccines, you look at yourself in the mirror. Now, let me explain something to you. I believe that when we're born, we are born divine beings of some sort, right? Whatever category anyone out there wants to put that into, but I do not believe that we're born having to be injected with multiple chemicals. We're already born with an immune system that protects us from stuff. That's why we have it. And another thing is that they're studying that these chemicals that are being injected into us is also mutating our DNA in real time. So the DNA that you're born with, if you had the opportunity to collect it and research it in a lab and you were that type of a scientist, and you followed some patients for, let's say, 20 years, and they had the scheduled 72 vaccines now by the time children are 18 years old, which is preposterous to me. It makes me livid angry, okay? And then you did a comparison on their DNA. DNA is literally changing in bodies of people in real time. So let's say Vinny and I had vaccines when we were little, and we're fine. Well, Vinny, do you have any arthritis? Do you have any heart problems? Is your liver having a problem? Do you have diabetes? Is your pancreas not functioning correctly? Okay? And like I said, there's more things that are involved in this, a different show for a different day. But common sense deduction, it's just common sense that says, where are all of these autoimmune diseases coming from at a rapid pace? Where are all of these cancers? 1 in 4 people diagnosed with some type of cancer in today's world. So in 1990, when I was paying a little bit of attention, because I knew a few people that had cancer, including a little girl that got brain cancer that I babysat, and she died. I was devastated. So I started asking myself all of these years, 1990 to 2019, what are some things that are contributing to this? And if you have any kind of deductive reasoning, you can figure this out on your own. So I don't know where we go from here. I just don't believe
Well, we don't
in
take the vaccines.
fear-mongering.
We don't take the vaccines. That's what we do.
That's right. I certainly don't.
Yeah. Yeah, we fought it all the way with our children. Every step of the way we fought it. We're going to be right back. We're going into our last segment right after these few short commercial announcements. Nurse Tracy's with us, and she's been talking about the dangers of vaccines, and she's been suggesting as strongly as you can that you do your own research before you get them. And I totally agree. Nurse Tracy, do you want to give out any information as to how people can find you on the Internet or not? You do not have to.
Yeah, that's fine. They can find me on Facebook at Victory Healing and Wellness. They can send me a message through that Facebook page, Victory Healing and Wellness, and we're located in Branson, Missouri. If there's any questions, or even if you want to have say why you believe it, and I'll tell you why I don't, and we can continue to talk to each other. I'm not there to convince you. I just want what's best for society. And also, before you talk to me, I want you to visit this website, or before you message me, because this website was created for vaccine injuries to report them through the federal government. And it's called, I'll tell you the website, it's vaers.hhs.gov. Go in there and find out what types of, and injuries are severely underreported, okay? Doctors and pediatricians have a way of saying my baby has this rash and has been running a fever of 104 for blah, blah, however many days. Well, or it's screaming its ever-loving head off, I can't make it stop crying. Everything I do isn't working. Well, most likely it's because its head is absolutely pounding because of brain swelling, encephalitis, another side effect listed on most vaccinations. And I'm guilty as a mother. When I had my children and 2 of them screamed, I said, oh, they have colic. So I'm at the pharmacy buying the drops for belly aches, thinking they have a belly ache. Well, no, they didn't. They're screaming their head off because I didn't know any better, and they got vaccinations, and they're absolutely being tormented. That's what was happening. So anyways, the VAERS website where you can self-report your vaccine injuries or anything that seems odd to you if your doctor's not going to report it. But a couple other things I want to talk about besides that real fast is that, we're encouraged to do well baby visits. And that's the government pharmaceutical tracking system of how they basically bully you into inoculations, the vaccinations. 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever. Now, I don't know about everybody else, but I can get on the scale and hold my baby, weigh myself, lay my baby down, and then put my bottom back on the scale and subtract the number to find out how much my baby weighs. I can go on the internet and say, at 2 months old, my baby should be doing this. At 6 months old, my baby should be having these milestones. Correct? I mean, we are not so ignorant as a society that we can't use a tape measure to measure how long our baby is. We can't figure out how to weigh them on the scale, and we cannot look up with the information highway what milestones our babies should be reaching. It's not necessary to go to a well baby visit because your baby is very well until you get there. Okay? Then you're going to start having some problems. They're going to have a seizure disorder. They're going to have ADHD. They're going to have oppositional defiant disorder. They may get autism. They may be catatonic. Period. They may go from a normal toddler to a vegetable. I don't mean to sound mean. I don't mean to be harsh. I have seen it over and over and over again. We know 2 people that have had multiple brain surgeries because of direct correlation to vaccinations and seizure activity. The mothers out here crying for people to listen to them, they care about the population also because they've either lost a baby or have severely vaccine-damaged children. The other thing I would like to encourage people to do is there's several. I have a stack of books probably 2 feet high, written by doctors or scientists, ones that are legitimate and want to go to sleep at night, okay, on their pillow with a good conscience, that you can attain easily. But 2 video series that you should watch are Vax and Vax 2. A couple of people that you could follow or look into their information is Mike Adams with Natural News. He has several articles on vaccinations. He's a scientist. He has a lab. He is a legitimate researcher. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Del Bigtree and Highwire, and Robert Kennedy Jr. All of these people are trying to fight for you, your health, and your children, along with myself. They're just at a national level.
Tracy, we're out of time, and the website that you recommended was VAERS, Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System.hhs.gov.
Yes.
Tracy, thank you so much for being with us. I'm looking forward to next Friday, same time, same station.
Thanks, Jenny. Have a great day.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
You too. Everyone all set? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Just me for this hour. And I'll be talking about some tips in my notebooks that I have compiled in case I ever write a book and publish it. But I'm not selling a book. I don't think I'll ever publish it. So these are just some notes that I wanted to share with you. If you've got some better ideas than I'm talking about, I'd love to hear from you. And you can give us a call. We'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933. So 68 years have gone by, and, I've been doing all kinds of work around the house when I was growing up and ultimately around the farm I'm a first-generation farmer. No one in our family was a farmer before I and my wife. So here we are, and we're learning how to do things, I think, a little bit more efficiently and a little bit better, because we look at what can go wrong, and then we try to prevent things from going wrong in the future. So that's how we approach things. When I work on electricity, I found this really neat little gadget. It's a handheld. It's like the size of a highlighter, a little bit longer, and about the diameter of a nickel, and about 6 inches long, maybe 7 inches long. The one I have in my hand is called a Surveyor, Surveyor, and it is a non-contact electrical tester. And when I work on electrical outlets and electrical panels and breaker panels and so forth, fuse boxes, I want to know if it's powered up. Even though I think it's not, I really want to know. So I have this little device. It's made out of plastic. It's all plastic. And all you do is there's a tip on it, and you just touch the plastic tip against the insulation of a wire that you want to know if it's energized. You don't have to touch it against bare wire. You can touch it against the insulation. As a matter of fact, you can, if you have an extension cord plugged in, one of those orange extension cords, or any color really, you can just touch this non-contact electrical tester against the insulation of an orange extension cord anywhere on that extension cord, and it will beep. It'll sound kind of like this. Okay? And if it does, you know that that cord is plugged in, or that circuit is energized, or that outlet is energized. It's really simple. Now, what do they cost? Well, you can go to eBay and you can find them for $1.98. Shipped, delivered to your door, $1.98. So I've got one. Actually, I have two of them so that I can have them at the ready. I have an electrical toolbox that has all my electrical type devices in it. You know, the electrician's pliers and the diagonal cutters and the wire strippers and the needle nose pliers and, those kinds of things. So, and the flat blade screwdriver and the number 2 Phillips screwdriver and the square drive screwdriver. I keep all that together along with, the crimpers and the wire nuts. And by the way, wire nuts come in different colors. And they don't come in different colors for your own amusement. They come in different colors because they are color-coded for the number and thickness of wire that you would use in them. There it is. It's just going off again. Okay. So the ones that I use the most for the smallest of wires, let's say I'm wiring something like an 18-gauge wire that would be a cord for a lamp. Then I would use the orange-colored wire nuts. Then if I wanted to put together 2 wires that would maybe be 14-gauge or 12-gauge, like Romex, I would use the yellow. If I were going to put maybe 3 12-gauge wires together, I would use the red ones. So the ones that I use most often are orange for the smallest of the wires, yellow for a little bit thicker wires, and then red for thicker wires. Now, they have even smaller sizes and bigger sizes, but those are the 3 big ones, the orange, the yellow, and the red. And those are the ones that I use most often. You can buy them on eBay. I buy about 100 or so at a time, and we use them pretty often here. We've used hundreds of each here when we built our farmhouse. And when I wire electrical outlets, I think I've told you a number of times that I solder those connections together rather than just twist them together. But if I were going to connect some wires and think, well, maybe I'm going to have to work on this later, then I won't solder them. But I'll remember where they are, and I'll solder them when I'm finally done with the ultimate finished product. That's when I'll solder them. But temporarily, no. And there's some question as to whether you should twist the wires together with electrician's pliers. After the wire's been stripped, twist them together, then put the wire nut on, or put the wire nut on and leave the wires straight in there, in the wire nut. And I've tried it both ways. So here's what I do. If I'm going to solder the wires, I twist them. If I'm just going to use a wire nut on them, and it's a temporary solution, I don't twist them. That's how I do it. And if I were going to not solder them and make it a permanent connection, I would just put the wires in straight and twist the wire nut. And to make a good, strong, tight connection, I use electrician's pliers to tighten the wire nuts on even tighter than I could with my fingers. Okay, so that's the wire nut 101 paragraph in the book. Okay, so what happens if you decide that you want to lower the cost of electricity for your refrigerator or freezer? What do you do? Well, one thing you do, obviously, is you clean the coils. Now, some refrigerators, some older ones, not frost-free ones, the kind you manually defrost, might have coils on the back of the refrigerator. And those black coils can get dusty over the years. So you pull the refrigerator out, and you get your vacuum cleaner with the brush attachment, and you vacuum those coils. And that will aid the transfer of heat from the coils to the air in the room wherever your refrigerator happens to be. And it works great. Now, some coils are underneath the refrigerator. So there's usually a little vent, a decorative vent at the bottom of the refrigerator, and you pop that off. Sometimes it's held on with 2 screws. Sometimes it's just held on with friction-type clips. And you pop that off, and you'll see the coils underneath the refrigerator. And there's a fan there. And the idea is they could use smaller coils if they put a fan to blow air across the coils. And that works pretty well, too, except it's cheaper to manufacture, but it's dustier. So what happens is those smaller coils get way more dust on them than the coils in the back of the refrigerator. So what you should do is every 6 months or so, get on your hands and knees, pop that decorative cover off the bottom of the refrigerator, and then take that wand with your vacuum cleaner and vacuum that out. And you'll see, you won't believe how much dust is there, especially if you have dogs or cats, and, animals in the house. You won't believe how much dust is there. And if you live in the city, you won't believe how the dust is black, like soot from a diesel bus or diesel truck. You won't believe how black it is, seriously, sticky and black. Then you'll think, I wonder if that's why I cough so much. But you can vacuum those coils out very easily, and you should probably do that every 6 months. But the problem is that refrigerators generally do not come with rollers anymore. They used to. They used to come with adjustable rollers, and you could roll that refrigerator out into the kitchen floor, get behind it, wash behind it, clean it off. And it's really hard today because they don't come with rollers. So what do? Well, you buy rollers. And we have, I think, 5 sets of rollers here at the farm. And a set of rollers is about $20 or less. They're made by a company called Shepherd Manufacturing, and they have two different classifications of these rollers. One is rated for about 1,500 pounds, 12 to 1,500 pounds. The other is 2,000 pounds. I only buy the 2,000-pound ones because they're a little more substantial, and they only cost like $2 more. So we put all of our refrigeration equipment, including a chest freezer, on these rollers. And the idea is they will roll forward or backward. Now, these are not going to roll 360 degrees. You can't spin the refrigerator around. They only roll forward or backward, which is fine. And that's all you really want to do. So before you fill up your refrigerator, you buy these rollers, and they will jack up your refrigerator about 1.5 inches. So if you don't have 1.5 inches of extra clearance on top of your refrigerator, they're not going to work. And keep in mind that you need to have at least 1 inch of clearance on every side of your refrigerator as a general rule, at least. Actually, 2 inches at the top would be even better. 3 inches would be better than that because heat rises, and you want the heat to come out from the coils that keep the refrigerator cold. You want that heat to get out, and that heat will get out from the sides and the top. Now, I've seen instances where custom refrigerator or custom kitchen cabinets have been made, and the size was exactly the size of the refrigerator. Makes no sense to me. Because the only way a refrigerator can be cooled on the inside is to remove the heat from the inside. So that heat has to go somewhere. Now, if you build a box and it fits the refrigerator perfectly on all sides, how does that heat get out? I don't know. So consider having at least 1 inch of airspace around your refrigerator. Now, some refrigerators and freezers will use the skin of the appliance as the coil. So what they'll do is the coils will be on the inside of the refrigerator or freezer, and they will be tack welded to the skin, the white or the stainless steel or the black, whatever it is that the skin of your refrigerator is. Not the door, but the sides and the top, and sometimes the back. So that skin of the refrigerator now is the coil. And if you don't have enough air circulation space around there, the heat can't get off the skin. And what you're doing is you're trying to heat the refrigerator inside from the skin of the refrigerator. And you use way more electricity. Your compressor will run way more, and the life expectancy of that appliance will be way less. So what you want to do is make sure you have plenty of airspace around your refrigerator. Clean the coils. And the easiest way to do that is when it's unloaded, get these rollers. But if you have these rollers and you have a vinyl floor in your kitchen, you're going to make indentations from the rollers on the vinyl floor under the refrigerator. So keep that in mind. And they're generally not recommended for wood floors. To that I say nonsense. We have wood floors in our kitchen, wood floors under the refrigerator, got wood floors everywhere except for in the bathrooms, and it works just fine. So for those of you wondering, can you have wood floors in the kitchen? Of course you can. Of course you have to seal them, though. You'll have to seal them with polyurethane or something like that. So an empty refrigerator or an empty freezer will cycle the compressor a lot more often than a full freezer or a full refrigerator. But it's kind of impractical to have your refrigerator or freezer filled more than 7/8 full. But we try to do that. So if we have a refrigerator that's running and there's not much in it, what we do is we put some bottles of water in there. And those can be cleaned out 2-liter soda bottles. The idea is that you'll have more mass that's cold, and it will kind of keep the cold, so the compressor won't cycle as much. And the hardest thing on electricity is not the running of the compressor, it's the turning or powering up of that compressor, which will use about 2 to 3 times more energy to start a compressor than to run a compressor. And that's any electrical motor. So whether it be a refrigerator, freezer, or an air conditioning compressor or a fan, anything with electric motor, you use 2 to 3 times more electricity to start it than to run it. So the idea is to start it less. Well, you can do that by filling 2-liter bottles of water and squeeze out 10% of the water, so you only fill them 90% full. Kind of like when you buy a soda at the Chinese factory outlet, 2-liter bottles. They never fill them all the way, because if they did, they would break. They would rupture in cold weather and in warm weather. So what we do, not so much in the refrigerator, but in the freezer, we will keep some empty soda bottles. And we don't drink very much soda, but if we have company, we might have some. And we'll put those bottles we'll sterilize them, and we'll put them in the freezer. And the reason for that is if we ever had to have water in an emergency, well, there's always some in the freezer. Or if we go shopping and we want to buy some things that are cold and we want to bring them home, but we're going to be gone for a couple hours, we'll take those frozen 2-liter bottles with us, and we'll put them in the cooler, and they'll keep cold whatever we have in the cooler. So, and it will also take up space, airspace, in the freezer. so that the freezer won't cycle so often. So it's just a quick tip for getting a lot of bang for the buck out of empty soda bottles. Okay, so you might want to try that. So the more full your refrigerator or freezer is, the less it's going to cycle, the longer the compressor is going to last, and the less electricity you're probably going to use. If you were going to buy a new home, whether it be a new used home or a new home, and you want to know if the floors are level, there's an old trick to doing that. What you can do is take a large marble. But it has to be spherical. It can't be lumpy. It's got to be like a ball bearing spherical. Or bring a big ball bearing with you. And I'm talking about one that might be the size diameter of a quarter or larger. And if you've got that in your pocket and you want to know if the floors are level, just put that marble on the floor, and if it rolls, that floor is not level. You can check counters with it. You can check floors with it. And but you can't check irregular type surfaces because the surface friction is going to be too great, and it won't work on rugs. But it will work on hardwood floors. It'll work on floors that, composite floors. It'll work on that. But it can't be one that has a rough textured surface. Radiator caps. I have noticed, and I've been doing this for a long time, I've noticed that the radiator pressure caps on automobiles and light trucks have increased in pressure over the years. They started out with, maybe 7 pounds per square inch of pressure. And then they went to like 10, 11, 12, 14, 15. Now some of them are up to 30 pounds per square inch for some imported cars. And the reason they're doing this is that the coolant or the antifreeze will boil at a higher temperature if it's under more pressure. The whole problem with that is everything's under more pressure, and the higher the pressure, the greater the tendency for leaks. So what I do is I reduce the pressure. I go exactly in the opposite direction that the manufacturers are going. I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we come back. So Mrs. Finelli and I have a rope bed. It's probably getting close to 200 years old. As a matter of fact, everything in our family is really old. And, all of our furnishings. And so a rope bed is a pretty heavy frame. The one that I'm thinking of right now it's made out of 4x4 posts. And it has 4x4 bed rails. So the whole bed is made out of 4x4 lumber. And there are pegs in it every 6 inches or so. And what would happen is rope would be laced from left to right, the headboard to the footboard, kind of like in a grid. And then what would happen is there would be a bag, which would be the mattress, and be filled with straw. And that would be put on top of the rope. And that's how old this bed is. So it's a pretty massive bed. And the reason I'm telling you this is that when we bought these years ago, they were very, very inexpensive. And now they're considered, antiques. Well, this particular bed, it's impossible to sleep on a rope bed. I mean, it would break your back. So what I did was I put a 1x2 along the inside edge of this rope bed. I nailed it very carefully. And then I put slats, and the slats were different widths of lumber that I had lying around. Some of it was shelving lumber, 1x2. I'm sorry, 1x12, 1x8, 1x10, maybe even down to 1x6. I put that on the supports along the sides of the bed, and I put the slats across from side to side at the same height as the top of the 4x4s that are the rails. So now I had a flat surface, and I put a mattress, a very stiff mattress on top of that. There's no box spring. So if you have one of these beds, and if you do it the way I mentioned, you do not need a box spring. You just need a mattress. And it works great. But now the bed and mattress weigh about 200 pounds together. And there's a real small footprint that the legs of the bed will make on the floor. And if you have carpeting, like an oriental rug or wood floors, it puts a lot of pounds per square inch downward on that rug or on that floor. I don't like that. So what I did was I have a lot of pallet material here, and I've got some nice clean pallets, like brand new pallet material. And I cut squares that are about 3 inches by 3 inches of this pallet material, pallet material is really, really strong wood, like oak, red oak, white oak, maybe some hickory. And that's what's around here. And that's what pallets are made out of. Mostly oak, and very rarely hickory, but there's some hickory here. So I cut these squares, and they're about a ½ inch thick, 3 by 3 by ½ inch thick, and I put that under each of the legs of the bed. And I have it on the studio table. So 2 of the legs of the studio table are on an oriental rug, and 2 are not. So I adjust the thickness of maybe 1 or 2 of these blocks, and it protects the oriental rug from being stained by the stained material, or maybe these pieces of furniture might have one of these steel round buttons on the bottom for sliding the furniture. Now, if they were to rust, they would rust into the rug or carpeting or floor. So to prevent all that, I use these blocks of wood. And you may want to try that too. And what do they cost? Well, they're free. I heard a commercial about, if you're afraid of an IRS audit. Why would you be afraid of an IRS audit? Actually, it's kind of fun. At least I think it's fun. I look at it as a challenge because no matter what they ask me, I'm not afraid of it because I prepared our taxes. Actually, Mrs. Finelli and I prepared our taxes. So I know exactly what all the numbers are, and I know exactly where they all came from. And I have records. And on the receipts for everything that we bought, I write in pencil on the receipt what it was for, the dates there, what it was. And if they say, do you have a receipt for? I go, of course. I'll just have to find it. Now, I'm not ever in a hurry. So when I've been audited a bunch, and I bring the whole family. And when we get audited, it's kind of like going to the movies, except it's free. And it's a challenge. And I have no problem engaging in a battle with the IRS, none whatsoever, because I know I'm right, and I know I can defend everything that is on those forms, everything. But I'm never in a hurry. I'm never in a hurry for them. So whatever they want, I've got it. I've got it with me. I just have to find it. So you might want to consider doing your own taxes, because if you do, you'll probably be able to keep more of your income than you did if you have someone else prepare your taxes. Now, if someone else prepares your taxes and you get audited, now that's something to worry about, because you really don't know what they did because you didn't do it. But if you did it, then you know what you did, and then you can defend it very, very easily. Okay, next thing. When I cut wood, I always do it the same way. I measure twice, because you can't cut it and then cut it again and make it longer. And it doesn't work like that. Each time you cut it, it gets shorter. So I want to make sure that I get it right the first time. So I always measure twice. And here is the trick that I use. I use what's called a speed square. So if I'm going to cross-cut a piece of wood, shelving or 1x2 or 1x3, I use a speed square, and you can get them at any tool outlet, or you can get them at the Chinese factory tool outlet for like $2, maybe $3. They look like a triangle. And they have a lip on them, and you can put them along the straight edge of the piece of wood you're cutting, and then you can draw a line across. And here's the secret. What I do is, do you cut on the left side of the line or the right side of the line, or do you cut the line? Well, I always save the line. When I'm done, that cut is right up against the line, and I can still see the line after the cut. But which side of the line do you cut? Well, I always put it, and this is my way of doing it, I always put an X on the side I want to keep. So when I measure it, I put the line on it, I put an X on the side I want to keep, and that tells me every single time how to cut that board, cross-cut. And you can do the same thing too, and it'll save you some mistakes. Let me just look through my book here, actually my spiral-bound notebook, and find some other paragraphs. Okay, plumbing. Now, this is in no particular order. I just wrote down thoughts as they came to me. I keep some of these spiral-bound notebooks in the studio, and when I thought of something, I just walk into the studio and write down, some of my notes. So that's why this book is kind of random. Plumbing. Now, this is drain plumbing. So under the sink, sometimes you'll see what looks like a chrome-plated drain pipe. And that's fine. Sometimes you'll see plastic. So which is better? Well, I've been using plastic for over 30 years now. It's less expensive, and I've never had any problems with it. Never, not once. So if you're concerned, if you have metal and you're going to replace it because it's been eaten through, you can replace it with plastic drain plumbing, and it really works just fine. Plastic seems to be impervious to just about all the chemicals that you might put down the drain. And you can intermix metal with plastic. It works fine. It's designed, the plastic replacement plumbing is designed to connect to the original metal if you have, an older home. Kitchen faucets. Over the years, I've determined that it really is better to buy a brand name. And the brand names that we have used are pretty much two: American Standard and Moen. Moen/Stanodyne. And both of them are fine. And so you pick the design that you like, and I like a high-rise faucet. I do not like a low faucet in the kitchen sink. I want to be able to wash large pots and pans from a faucet aerator that's higher up rather than lower. And I've been buying them for years. And so what I do is I keep the box, because all of these faucets that I buy have a lifetime warranty. And the mechanism that actually controls the flow of water will last about 10 years. If you keep the box, you will be able to call that number for American Standard and say, I've got your Model 123 faucet. It drips. I've had it about 10 years. I've got the original box. Here is your part number. And they'll say, okay, well, that's got a lifetime warranty. Where would you like us to send the replacement cartridge? It's as simple as that, as long as they're still in business. So I always keep the boxes for the faucets, and I try to buy the same faucets. So in our house, we have 3 kitchen faucets. I've used 2 of them. They're in 2 locations, and I have 1 brand new spare. And the spare has the number for the company that manufactured it, and it's got the model number, and it's all right there. And in the bathrooms, I used 2-handle, so there's a hot and a cold valve, and a high-rise. And sometimes they're called bar sinks, as in bar and grill. And these are high-rise, so our bathroom faucets do not look like the traditional bathroom faucet that you'll see in most houses. Most of them are very low. And so if you want to wash your hands are going to go below the faucet and actually into the sink bowl. And I think that's crazy. So our faucets are high-rise, and I can wash my hands above the level of the counter or the sink. And they're about $50. And the ones that we use are called Cadet, C-A-D-E-T. It's American Standard brand, and it has two levers, one for hot and one for cold. And they come with a lifetime warranty. So if you have a problem with the aerator or if you have a problem with the valving, the replacement parts are free. It seems to make sense to me to do it that way. It makes no sense to have the standard faucet that is what's called a 4-inch center set, which is low. It makes no sense to me to do that. Because if I want to believe, we'll get gross here, but if I brush my teeth and I want to rinse, I can just put my head under the aerator. I don't have to touch the aerator, and I can get a mouthful, rinse, 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 rinse. And so can everybody else. And if I wanted to wash my hair with warm water in the sink, I could do that too. But you can't with a 4-inch center set that's low. We'll talk more about plumbing when we come back. So I just took a tape measure and I measured the height of the aerator of the faucet in the bathroom sink, and it's 7 inches above the counter height. So that's way higher than the standard center set. Another thing that you might want to think about is the drain in your bathroom. So if you're going to be buying a bathroom sink, what you can do is you don't have to buy that standard pop-up drain where you push this lever or you pull this lever and the drain poppet goes up or down. That's a great place for bacteria to grow, and I don't like those. So what I looked at was, what do commercial establishments do? How do they handle their bathroom sinks? So if you go to a hotel or motel, you might find this. You might find that they have a perforated drain. And there's a company called KES, and they have a perforated grid. And it's a strainer, and typically it's chrome plated. And it might have about almost 20 little holes in the bottom. So instead of a pop-up drain, it has these little holes. And they cost about $13. So instead of the traditional, what the herd uses, you don't have to do that. You can have this perforated grid type drain in the bottom of your sink. And it really works really, really well. So the brand of faucet that we used is American Standard. It's called Cadet. It's about $60, and it has a lifetime guarantee. But I don't think companies are going to be around forever. So I try not to rely on the guarantee or warranty for a lifetime as much as the quality of the product. And then I try to get replacement parts ahead of time so that when they do start to leak, I already have the parts. So who makes the best can opener? Well, I think in a manual can opener, it's made by a company called Swing Away, SWING, second word, Away, AWAY, manual can opener. So the standard handle model is $7.99. The model with a longer crank is $1 more, $8.99. And if you want the wall-mounted version of it, $14.99. So we have the two, the standard and the longer-handled crank, and we've had them at least 15 to 20 years. It's the same kind that my grandmother had mounted on the wall in her kitchen, except she had the wall-mounted one, and she had hers for 40 years, still working. And I'm not sure if they're made in the United States anymore, but they were. And they last a long time. So if you're concerned that you want to eat when the electricity is not available, then you need a manual can opener. And the cheap ones aren't very good at all. And if they get really stiff, if the crank gets stiff, you can take a drop of vegetable oil and apply it to the shaft as a bearing lubricant, and it'll work great again. Now, we wash our can openers in the dishwasher periodically because, frankly, food gets on the cutter wheel. And that food can grow things that we don't want to be growing on there. So we wash them in the dishwasher. We hardly throw things out here at our farm. And one of the things that we've kept is carpet padding. One of the times that we put carpet in, or carpet padding in, for under our wall-to-wall, I'm sorry, not wall-to-wall, under our Oriental rugs, we buy it's kind of like a fiber padding. It's not this foam rubber. It's actually made out of fibers, and it doesn't compress very much. And what I do is I cut it into squares to go under furniture. So if I think I need to adjust a piece of furniture, maybe move it a little bit, it's kind of like a polypropylene hair padding. It's about 1/2 of an inch thick or 3/8 of an inch thick. Doesn't compress very much, and it will slide over wood floors. So what I do is I cut this padding to a little bit larger than the legs of whatever I want to put it under to protect the floors if I'm going to have to slide and adjust that piece of furniture. So I don't even throw out carpet padding. So I've had the same carpet padding in rolls that have been left over for years, and I keep it because I use it for all kinds of applications. Another thing, you can make your own gaskets. Years ago, most gaskets were made out of a specially treated paper. And sometimes we don't have the gaskets for automotive purposes that we need, like a water pump. And you can make your own. If you have gasket material, and you can buy it for maybe $5 for a roll of this, and it might be 18 inches by 18 inches or 18 by 24, what you do is you carefully lay that gasket material over the water pump or the water pump outlet, and you make sure it doesn't move, and you gently tap with the ball end of a ball peen hammer, tap, 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 and that will cut the gasket for you. It'll literally cut out the gasket for you, the holes and everything. And that's a great way to go if you don't have the gaskets. Class, we're out of time. Above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.